Home education offers many benefits to the child and the family, but does it have a wider impact? And does home education benefit society as a whole, and South Africa in particular? Joining me in the Homeschool Lounge are Linda and Johan Heckroodt and Bouwe van der Eems. Linda, would you like to start the conversation and just tell us, what is home education? Does it feature internationally? Is it a South African phenomenon?
Very much, yeah. Home education is simply educating a child in the safe and personal environment of his home, and it's the choice of parents to have the direct influence and say in their children's education, as opposed to giving someone else the authority to educate their children. So that's in a nutshell, yeah.
And about international trends, is it growing? Is it shrinking?
Very much. No, it's very much growing. It's growing in all the major nations in the world, starting with United States. United States, it's growing between 2 and 8% per year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually quite significant. Also considering the figures are currently, they speculate 2.3 million students doing homeschooling in America. There are about 3.4 million American students that have done at least a year homeschooling in America. And so if you put the figures together, we're looking at about 5.7 million US students who have been exposed or are to homeschooling. So America is really the trend-setting nation, and in terms of legislation and freedom and even regulation. So we need to look to America as a guideline, and especially to the HSLDA, the Homeschool Defense League, and their pioneering work on the legal front in homeschooling worldwide. There's also major growth in UK. UK has seen 40% increase in homeschoolers, according to the latest statistics, in the last 3 years. So, which brought that figure to about 48,000 students. All these estimations would be conservative, since not everyone registers. In the UK, the requirements are very lax. It's not very strict, so many people will homeschool without registering. And then you have nations. Canada is exponentially growing. Australia, Queensland has tripled its numbers in the last 5 years. And Japan is growing, ironically. China, where homeschooling is actually forbidden, has grown. They speculate between 6,000 and 23,000 people. The reason they speculate the 23,000 is due to homeschool support groups on WeChat. That totals about 23,000, but they speculate even more, quite significantly more, due to fear for being seen on social media because of the high surveillance state that China has become. So yeah, there's serious growth, and we need to take cognizance. I believe South Africa needs to take cognizance, especially the authorities need to take cognizance of the popularity and growth worldwide. And it's being welcomed with open arms amongst the intelligentsia and the academia worldwide. Ironically, there it's being welcomed, but some of the governments across the world are still resisting the, being more lenient towards homeschoolers and the requirements and the regulations. It's important to note that, for example, France has exploded in numbers in terms of homeschooling, but the regulations have been have become more restrictive in the last few years. So it really is a matter of authorities, like my husband always also says, authorities being more committed to a philosophical bias than the practical and academical realities of homeschooling. So all in all, there's a major increase, yes, exponential growth across the world, but and in most countries that I've just mentioned, there is a lot of freedom. But certain selected countries, like, for example, Germany, Sweden, China, India, I believe now has become more restrictive again, where they were very open. Certain countries just seem to prefer and cling to their ideological preferences and bias, which, which to a measure we face in our country.
Ironically, Russia has liberated homeschooling in a big way. Like Linda says, I don't think every country necessarily consciously promote a ideology. One tends to think that as soon as the restrictions are forced upon homeschooling associations, one tends to think that they're promoting socialism, and in a way they do, but I don't think it's necessarily a conscious effort. In many ways, it's also protecting existing establishment and empire building. There's also money involved. So for us in South Africa, it will be an ongoing lobbying and presenting facts and success rates that's going to matter. Hopefully, Bo will know more, but hopefully, the current legislation is not going to be pushed through, because if it is, you're going to have to ultimately end up in some form of higher court and maybe even in the international court to defend your right. And I know we don't necessarily talk about this, but it is it's very important for us that the bigger countries show a form of liberated education, specifically for homeschoolers, if we really want to be successful.
If I can come in at this point, just giving a local perspective, we've done some estimates in 2017 based on the census and various other indicators, and we estimated the number of home learners in 2017 to be about 100,000. So that is a number that's often used when home education is discussed in South Africa. Now, recently, a curriculum supplier said in an article that they experience a growth of about 20% per annum. So if you now apply that 20% per annum growth to the 100,000 in 2017, we should be about 140,000 by now. Now, I also want to add on to another perspective that Linda touched on, and that's the Russia phenomenon. So Russia is very open to home education. They positively encourage it. And a country like Russia sits with a declining population problem due to the family structures that have been destroyed through communism, and they see home education as a way to restore families. And I think in South Africa and Africa in general, we have got a problem of families, dysfunctional families. And I think that can also be a theme, that home education is a means to restore the family structure, and through that restore communities.
This huge growth in home education must have an impact on schools. How does it benefit the school system?
Okay, so what we sit in South Africa, so after about 25 years of the SA Schools Act that was promulgated in 1996, we basically sit in a situation where the majority of children are attending dysfunctional public schools, and some children get a good education at well-functioning Model C schools, but these Model C schools are generally inaccessible to most children, and they've got long waiting lists. And then there are private schools that are inaccessible for the middle class and the poor families. So we've just changed from a race-based inequality system to a class-based inequality system, and due to the regulatory environment we've got. So in this situation, alternative education, and I use this term alternative education on purpose, because it's not only home education that's grown, it's also a lot of informal learning centers that has grown significant. It's often referred to as cottage schools, has grown significantly. And we estimate that the number of learners in cottage schools could be similar to those that are home educated. So if we take those numbers of, let's say, 140,000 home learners plus 140,000 learners in cottage schools, that works out to a saving of 4.6 billion rand per annum. And that money is therefore available to fix those dysfunctional schools, which is a great benefit to the school system. Furthermore, you've got 280,000 learners not in the school system, and that has made a lot of places available to people in those Model C schools with the long waiting lists. So there are lots of children that are attending a school of their choice, thanks to other parents not putting their children in schools. The other benefits that alternative education is that it's something that can be a solution for rural education. It's also a solution to mother tongue education. I mean, every child can receive education in his mother tongue, even if that mother tongue is not an official language. So this is a solution that can grow, that can provide quality education to rich and poor without costing the government anything, without any infrastructure required. So I think those are in general the benefits to general society.
Linda, would you like to add something, or Johan?
Yeah, okay, yes, I'll quickly go, then you can, yeah, it's interesting that the cry among the critics of public schooling, even though they're in the system, it's very much for parental involvement and community involvement. There's a few articles, the Institute for Race Relations, the IRR, I'm sure Bouwe, you would take cognizance of them. They often lament in the media, as recently as January of this year. An article appeared in it was the IOL and the Business Tech, if I remember correctly, basically lamenting the dismal state of public schools in South Africa. And their proposed solution is, in a nutshell, is parents should take over. That's basically, there's a bit of tongue-in-cheek in there, but parents should really take over and not politicians, and as opposed to politicians, and also community should be involved. And you see, I remember from the 2014 research that I did, the more academical research on schools, the cry was always for parents to be more involved. And just because of what we've seen historically, where parents and communities are involved. And So that is a proposal that is being made, but it's a minority voice. But they don't necessarily propose homeschooling as the alternative, but all the principles they convey in their proposed solution does reflect the principles of homeschooling. So for sure. And then there are, I think also January of this year, there was an article in Business Tech or Business, I think it was Business Tech, where it actually did sing the praises of homeschooling and the benefits that homeschooling can provide in the country, in terms of it just the sheer volume of numbers that cannot be accommodated in the public arena. And it even shared some statistics of the phenomenal growth the major curriculum provider in South Africa has grown from 400 students in 2002 to, if I remember correctly, to 16,000 students in 2018, this year, and they project 18,000 next year. So there is a measure of recognition from the public school domain that homeschooling is becoming a viable. We know it is a viable option. It's the best option. But they are slowly but surely, there seems to be a recognition that homeschooling can serve a valuable purpose from many perspectives. I think in 2014, it was 11,000 tax dollars per year per student in the schools. If you look at a number of 100,000 homeschoolers, we're talking serious, significant.
Currently we're working on 16,000 rand per learner. That's what it costs the state to put someone in a school.
Sure. Oh well, So they would,
So also just to add to the numbers, Canada actually they fund homeschoolers.
In some instances.
In some instances, it would be great if we could get there because of the savings that the homeschooling fraternity generates and contributes to the state coffers, but I don't think we will get there in this country. But those are all important aspects that one must use when one enters and engage with the state, who in South Africa, unfortunately, they as I say, they don't necessarily consciously promote a socialist agenda, but they are still very ignorant, even after much effort from the home educating associations, Pestalozzi Trust, to inform and educate the state what homeschooling actually is and the solutions that it can bring to the dismal state of education in this country. But apart from the savings that it generates, it contributes to the government. Remember, in a double income society, one of the parents choose to withdraw themselves from the economy and educate their children. So there's a huge sacrifice on the one hand, and then also a contribution to the state coffers. It's unfortunate that there are those who have vested interests and are not looking at the actual importance of and the necessity to bring a solution to the dismal state of education. But that goes for many other aspects in society and in our country as well.
Okay, we've had a brilliant first session. We'll continue this conversation in the next session.